Paul Hudrick is our guest for Inside the Sixers today, and he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, of course, the Sixers, after a very impressive performance last night, they are off tonight. They'll be back in action tomorrow against the Cavs. They're going to have one key player out. We'll get more on that coming up from Paul in just a second. But first, we welcome him in to a Sports Bash Friday. What's going on, Paul Hudrick?
I'm just living the dream, Mike. How are you, man?
The dream is great. The dream is fantastic because the Sixers last night had maybe one of their most dominating performances of the year, and I think a lot of people left that game talking about the job that Ben Simmons did on Luka Doncic.
Yeah, he was unreal. And it's not even, as much as we want to give him credit, and he deserves all the credit in the world, you could see it in the first half. Luka Doncic was visibly frustrated with the way Ben Simmons defended him. And then you also have to give credit to Joel Embiid because of, what Luka wants to do is he wants to either take that step back three or he wants to get you in the pick and roll, and then he wants to find guys and he wants to, get in the paint and kind of put you in a tough spot with the big man at the rim. But when you have a guy like Ben Simmons on him and then a guy like Joel Embiid at the rim, it really severely lessens his options. And then because Ben Simmons is so good at, he's got the length where he can defend that step back three when Luka wants to take it. We saw the two we hit against the Celtics that were ridiculous to win that game. And then also when Ben Simmons is strong enough and big enough that when Luka gets to the paint, he doesn't need help. So all the shooters are then, all the other Sixers defenders can glue to the shooters on the outside and give Luka really no outlet. So I just think that Ben Simmons is just a nightmare matchup for Luka Doncic and what he likes to do. And as great as Ben Simmons is in general, I think especially with Luka, the way he likes to play, I think Ben Simmons is an absolute nightmare matchup for him, and that's exactly how it played out last night.
Yeah, and I know that the frustration on Luka was evident. I mean, he was kind of like you saw him getting very frustrated there, and you wonder. I was talking about this with Broads earlier. That model using Ben Simmons and Thibault, and I even said, like, in the buyout market, a guy like Trevor Ariza, like, if you put Ariza, Thibault, and Simmons on the floor together, my gosh, you would see such frustration from other teams, and you wonder if, like, the Sixers are realizing that their blueprint is to win this thing, they're going to have to be the defensive-minded team against the teams that are offensive-minded, because that's an offensive-minded team last night that struggled.
Yeah, Dallas is one of the best offensive teams in the entire NBA. So for the Sixers to do that, it does show how good their defense can be when everyone's locked in. Now, they didn't have Porzingis, who's been banged up, most of the year. There's rumors he might actually be on the trade block now. But, still a pretty, they have obviously one of the most talented offensive players in the world in Luka Doncic. And then their supporting cast is pretty good. Features a couple former Sixers in there as well. But and I do think, Mike, that is going to have to be their identity, because when you look at the Nets' firepower, they can't match it. It flat out. At the way their roster is, as talented as their Sixers roster is, you can't match that Nets' firepower of those three guys. But what you can do is make life really tough on them. They're going to get theirs. They're going to score. But if you can make life hard for them and make it tough for them and make them have to really fight for every shot they get, that's how you have a shot to beat them. So I've been saying it from the beginning. As soon as the Nets made that Harden trade, I am dying to see that matchup with both of those teams at full force to kind of see the offense and the defense. And it's funny, if you look at the stats, you'll see, the Nets, I think, score like 7 more points a game than the Sixers, but the Sixers allow 6 fewer points. So it really would be that kind of fun dichotomy of matchups and, how it would all play out, offense versus defense. So I do think, to your point, Mike, that's where they're going to really win games, is on the defensive end of the floor. You see it against an elite team like Dallas, and I think that's going to have to be their blueprint going forward, at least with the roster that they currently have.
April 14th is the next time they play.
All righty. I know it's easy to say Ben Simmons is the best defender in the league as Sixers fans, but when you look around the NBA and when you realize it's not only just, he guards 1 through 5, but it's the level that he guards 1 through 5, which is crazy. Is he truly the best defender in the league? And is there anyone that even brings something to the table relatively close to what he does?
I'll say I'm biased only because I watch every Sixers game, so I see him play every single night. And for my money, I think he is right now the best defender in the NBA because of what you alluded to, bro. That versatility of him being able to guard 1 through 5. they play the Raptors, he's literally guarding Fred VanVleet and then Pascal, two completely different types of ball players, and him and Embiid are switching on Siakam. Like, it's just the versatility that Simmons brings. I don't think it's matched. I think the closest guy is probably Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, that he was, he's a reigning defensive player of the year. But I think that Simmons, personally, I would take Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons is more disruptive. I think he gets his hands on more basketballs than Giannis does. And so that's why I would elevate him. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really talented defensive players. Anthony Davis is another guy who's really versatile. I mean, he's a big, but, when he gets switched on the guards, it's still, he causes a lot of problems. There are a lot of excellent defensive players in the NBA, but right now I do think that Ben Simmons, when you couple that versatility with that disruptive nature, with his ability to get hands on basketballs and get deflections, get steals, get blocks, and then get out on the other end and run, for my money, I do not think there is a better defensive player in the league right now than Ben Simmons.
All right, Paul, give us an update on what we know about Tobias Harris and then what the Sixers might do in his absence, because that's one area where they have been, we talked about. They need to find a backup stretch for him. They're going to need one the next couple nights at the minimum. So what do you know?
So from what I understand, the good news is no structural damage to the knee. So that's obviously great news. It is a right knee contusion is what it's being labeled as. He's not going to play against Cleveland. Only a couple games left until the break. So I don't know if it's really worth, for me at least, playing him up until the All-Star break, depending on the severity and all that. I mean, Tobias Harris is a guy. I sent out a tweet earlier. His durability is insane. Since he's gotten here, he's missed 5 games. 3 of them were earlier this year because of the health and safety protocol. So it wasn't even an injury. He didn't even have COVID. He was just in close contact, so they kept him out. And then before that, he missed 1 game last year in the bubble when Brett kept the starters out. And then his first season here, when he got here from LA, he missed game 82. But for him, it would have been game 83 because the Clippers had played an extra game. So you're talking about a guy who just doesn't miss time. It's significant in itself that he's missing 1 game. We'll see how many he'll miss going forward. Clearly, he's going to push to want to play. But at the same time, listen, the Sixers and Doc Rivers has said this many times in reference to Joel Embiid. It's just there is a bigger goal in mind here. Is it worth it to have Tobias Harris in there for 3 games, or would you rather just give him that time and then the All-Star break to just heal up? Maybe a blessing in disguise, that he didn't make the All-Star team, because now, not that he's a smart guy. He wouldn't have pushed it if he was hurt, but, he gets a full, all that time off to rest, and, they're going to need him. He's been so good this year. Didn't make the All-Star team, obviously, but is having an All-Star caliber season. He's been so big for what they do. So, it's a relief that it's not anything structural, but we'll see how long it keeps him out. And, I'm sure the Sixers are going to be very cautious this close to the All-Star break.
So what do they do in his place? I mean, even if it's just a couple games, does somebody have a chance to win the Sixers front office over here? And we look through the roster. I mean, Mike Scott's really the one guy, but do you play Scott for extended minutes? If he only plays, say, 20 minutes, who else plays? They don't really have another stretch 4 type of player. So how do they kind of piece this together?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They're going to, Ben Simmons is probably going to have to take on, heavy off-ball minutes at certain stretches of the game with the bench unit, maybe playing more with Shake Milton, which I would be intrigued to see that, because I do like their chemistry together and their little 2-man game they have sometimes, and those guys in the pick and roll. So that could be a weird kind of blessing in disguise that they kind of get to see that look a little bit more. What's not great is, you're going to have to probably stretch Ben Simmons out a little bit for the next few games, or, at least the next game at minimum. Mike Scott might have to play a few more minutes because he is kind of their true stretch 4. Starting lineup-wise, I don't know what they do. Do they go back to Korkmaz? And, because he did play really well in the Toronto game. He got that start. He got really hot in the first quarter, and it really set the tone for that game. Do they go to Shake Milton, to do that? But then again, he played really well with the bench unit last night. So do you want to break that up? Or do you just throw Mike Scott in the starting lineup and give him a chance? The one thing I will say with Mike Scott is he's had a tough year, and it's not that he has played poorly. He just can't stay healthy this year. He has really not gotten a chance to play an extended amount of games and some minutes. So, obviously down year last year, but was very good for them 2 years ago. So maybe you do give Mike Scott a little bit more of a look now that he's healthy, and you see if maybe he can help you out. Or if not, maybe he just looks good for another team. And, the trade deadline's getting closer. So this might be a chance to showcase a guy or two.
Here's my out-of-the-box thought, and I'm basing this off of your tweets. Paul Reed, any possibility my man gets him 4 minutes?
My instinct is to say no. What I think the plan is for Paul Reed is dominate the G League, which he has done. Build that confidence up. Maybe at the end of the year when the G League season's done, over those last few games when you're going to be resting guys and guys are going to be in and out of the lineup, then that's maybe when he gets another NBA look. But to me, I think the goal with him and Rajon Tucker for now is let them play with the Blue Coats, let them get big time minutes and let them play in big time situations so that, if the Sixers need them or want to use them down the stretch, they're in game shape. They have, that confidence boost and they're at a level they're, used to playing high minutes. So if you do need to go to one of those guys, they're ready to go. So I would say, I imagine they would keep Paul Reed in Florida for now in the bubble and just let him keep playing really well. He had another big game today, another 20 and 10 plus game today. Rajon Tucker also had like 25 points, I think, today. So let those guys do their thing with the Blue Coats and let them build that confidence down there.
All right, Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers. At Paul Hudrick is the Twitter handle for Sixers info. And this weekend, of course, they take on the Cavs, and you can hear that here on 97.3 ESPN. We brought up a topic earlier. Somebody was watching the show, and in the comments section, we didn't bring this up. You said the other day you did the trade machine over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And
it was to death.
It was
He
to death. You did it to death. But I guess you didn't assume that they would include both Green and Curry in a deal, correct? Would they not trade the two of them together?
Why would you do that? But anyway.
Well, somebody suggested trade Green and Curry and like a Bradley. And, I mean, but that's something you're saying they wouldn't package those two together.
I can't. You would just hurt your I think to that point, you would hurt your depth so much you would be literally trading two starters. And I get it for Kyle Lowry, but that to me, that's too much. You can't give up two starting caliber players to get one as good as Kyle Lowry is. And then that would mean you'd still have to up. I just think there would be too many pieces you'd still have to upgrade. Because even if they get Kyle Lowry, you still need to improve the bench. You can't just get Kyle Lowry and then be done. You still need to make other moves. So no, I personally would not include Curry. Now, I've seen some people have said
right there, by the way, on the screen. Curry, Green, Bradley, and a first.
Well, the problem I have here is not your answer, because I respect your answer. It's the fact that you told us that you worked this trade machine to death.
Oh, I hear you.
And you now left out a man that you didn't even try. I mean, you just flat out didn't even give him the time of day. That's not to death.
Because I'm not trading Seth Curry and Danny Green. That's just the way I feel. I mean, I didn't consider it because why would you trade Seth Curry when he's A, playing very well, B, he's played really well with Joel Embiid. There was just actually an article that came out that showed that when they are on the court together, the Sixers are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. So I'm really not sure why you would have to do that. I mean, there are other ways to make a trade for Kyle Lowry, which do not include Seth Curry. And to me, if I'm the Raptors, with all due respect to Seth Curry, I'd probably rather, if I'm going younger, I'd probably either rather have a young player or I'd rather have draft picks. I mean, that's just the way I would look at it. But I guess I apologize for not including Seth Curry, but I think I did it for good reason.
Well, we did say that. I said I would imagine that you didn't add him because you would think that there's no possible way that they would include both of those guys to get Lowry in return. Now, Broads asked an interesting question. If you could do a Lowry type of player and get one, or add a couple buyout guys like your PJ Tuckers and your George Hills, would you rather do the buyout guys too, or the better player via trade?
Well, if it gets to a point where you can like a George Hill or a PJ Tucker, although I think George Hill, I could be mistaken, but I think he's got another year on his deal, so I don't know if he'd be a buyout guy. But if you could get two, like a player or two that's a viable bench option in the buyout market, then go after Kyle Lowry, and then you still have the buyout market. There's nothing stopping them from doing both. And that's my personal feeling is this. I don't think it's just Kyle Lowry. If you make a Kyle Lowry trade, you still have other things. You still have your trade exception. You still have the taxpayer mid-level exception to get buyout guys. Now, the pieces that you use to get Lowry, could you maybe use those to get a different piece or pieces? Maybe I think, Mike, you talked about it, a package deal of Victor Oladipo and PJ Tucker. Could you do something like, sure, maybe there's a more creative way to do that. But I just think, I don't think it's an either or situation. I think you can get Kyle Lowry and still have resources to upgrade the bench and get solid players to really build your depth up and make this a really good playoff team.
George Hill, by the way, has a $10 million non-guaranteed year left on his
There you
deal.
go.
Okay. So I guess my question to you is, after, maybe making that move for Lowry and going after and also attacking someone in the buyout market, is this the year to go all in on that Kyle Lowry move? Do you look at this team and look at the East in general and say, well, look, while the Nets are playing hotter, the Sixers are in the conversation, or like is next year the year to go all in? I guess I'm just trying to balance, is this the all-in year? Or Gil brings up, why not both? Why can't it be both years?
Yeah, and I think Daryl Morey is a smart enough guy that he's not. He can go all in, but still be a good basketball team next year. You know what I mean? Like I think there is an approach that you can take where you are all in, that you're trying to win a championship this year, but that you're not leaving the cupboard empty for next year. Again, let's say you pull a trigger on a Lowry deal. The report is he still wants to play beyond this year. He'll be a free agent. You can re-sign him. So, I mean, if you re-sign him for the next couple, if you get him and you go on a nice run, I would think him coming home to Philadelphia and then going on a big playoff run, he'd probably be more inclined to want to re-sign. So there's nothing stopping you from pulling a trigger on that trade and then bringing Lowry back and running it back. Then you'll, maybe still have a resource or two where you could bring in a bench guy, or let's say, for instance, Kyle Lowry doesn't come back. You make that trade, that cap space is going to be there next year for Daryl Morey to use at his disposal. So I would be really intrigued to see what he would do. What kind of players would he bring in? We've already seen what he was able to do with the Al Horford contract and how he was able to turn Josh Richardson into Seth Curry. So what would he do with that cap space next year? So I think there is room to make a big move like a Kyle Lowry and go all in this year, but still have flexibility going into next season where you can load it back up and make another run next year. I don't think it's limited. Listen, and the other thing is too, I mean, the above all everything is Joel Embiid is 26 years old. Ben Simmons is 24 years old. As long as they are here, the Sixers are going to be a good team because you just need to add the right pieces around them. So I think as long as those guys are here under contract, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, and think about, I was talking about this the other day, Paul, see what think about 2 years ago where Joel Embiid was as a player at 24 years old. Now look at him at 26. And now think about where Ben Simmons might be 2 years from now. You will have tons of opportunities, you should, with these two guys. You should have another 5 to 8 legitimate chances with these two guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ben Simmons is locked up. I would assume that Joel Embiid, they're going to lock him up. He's already got a couple years left, but I would assume they're going to lock him up again. And, he's said many, many times that he would like to finish his career here. And I think as long as they keep doing things right by him, he'll want to stay. As long as they keep, building the roster in the way he likes it. Doc Rivers has obviously done a nice job. The team has responded to him. They like him. So as long as you kind of keep that cohesiveness together, I see no reason why either guy would want to leave. And I don't see any reason why, to your point, Mike, why can't Ben Simmons keep improving? We're already seeing what's going on this year. And he said it, like, I'm figuring it out. Plus, I am not ruling out, maybe it doesn't happen this year, but I'm not ruling out the idea that he becomes at least a competent shooter. On it. The guy works every single day. You're already seeing what how they're improving. The guy works. I think the only reason he doesn't do it engaged is what we talked about all the time, is the fact that he's looking for that high percentage play. And right now, his jump shot is not a high percentage play. So he'd rather see Seth Curry or Danny Green or Tobias Harris or even Joel Embiid shoot the three because he knows they can all do it better. So he would rather work to get those guys the open looks. Now, maybe in a year or two, maybe the best shot, like we're seeing this year with him realizing that, hey, me scoring is a pretty good option on a high percentage play. Maybe in a couple years, he'll see that mid-range jumper or the three-pointer as the high percentage play. So there's just like no ceiling right now on him. I think he's already so good, and he's still 24 years old, and he's still getting better. So, yeah, with that in mind, this team is going to be good for a while here. As long as, again, you have those two guys in place, this team is going to be competitive for a very long time.
Last one for Paul. As the commenter on the screen says, they have an $8.2 million trade exception. Could they use that? Can you kind of explain what that means and how they can utilize that?
Yeah, so I mean, the 8.2, it's basically means you can't, so you can only get like one player for it. So you can't get multiple players for that. And it has to be, the salary has to be that 8.2 number or lower. You can do, so let's for an example, a PJ Tucker would fall into that category. I think he makes like right around 8 million. So you could use the trade exception on PJ Tucker. Maybe you throw Houston a couple second-round picks. You can't include a player with that for the Sixers. So that means they can't say use the trade exception and Furkan Korkmaz or whatever and get something. Like it could be, but you can use draft picks. So let's say, you say, hey, hey, Houston, we'll give you, we have this $8.2 million trade exception. We want PJ Tucker. We'll give you 2 second-round picks. You could do something like that.
Right.
So then that would probably be the best use of it. A guy like Tucker, or, there's tons of other players that are out there that would fall under that 8 million or less category that they could use and get a very useful bench piece to really elevate and upgrade the bench.
Yeah, it's like when Howie Roseman uses the dummy year in the contract. It's essentially like a piece of paper that says, now you have the trade exception and you can get somebody with, like, they just start passing it around the league.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that's the way it works. And they got it obviously from the Al Horford deal because of the salary matching. So another, as much as it was good for the Sixers and Daryl Morey to just get out from under the Al Horford contract, you got a useful starter in Danny Green that you might be able to use in a trade. Plus you get that trade exception that you might be able to use to upgrade your bench. So that trade kind of just is kind of the gift that keeps on giving at the moment.
He's the gift that keeps on giving for Inside the Sixers. Paul Hudrick. And, of course, the Sixers take on the Cavs. The Cavs beat them a little while ago, so don't fall asleep on this Cavs team. And you can hear the game on 97.3 ESPN. Paul, have a great rest of your weekend, man.
You too, guys. And Broads, keep up the good work, bud. I'll talk to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's very nice of him.
Isn't it?
Forgot that you were leaving. We were having such a good groove today.
You're right. We are having. We always have a good. Is there ever a day where we don't have a good groove?
Maybe when we argue about Andrew Knapp.